Temperatures climb past what liquid water should tolerate, pressure spikes faster than tissue can respond, and for a fraction of a millisecond the environment crosses a boundary where chemistry stops behaving politely, and yet nothing explodes, nothing melts, nothing screams. The expected outcome is failure, total and immediate. But the sequence completes, cleanly. Only after that contradiction settles does the culprit appear. The pistol shrimp. It does not burn fuel, it does not ignite anything, it does not even strike with its body. Instead, it closes a specialized claw so fast that water itself collapses. This motion is not strength in the way muscles usually mean it. It is timing and geometry, pushed to a biological extreme. As the claw snaps shut, a jet of water is expelled at such speed that pressure behind it drops abruptly, low enough for dissolved gases to tear free and form a cavitation bubble. This bubble is not a side effect, it is the event. It grows, destabilizes, and then implodes, and during that collapse the temperature inside briefly rises to thousands of degrees Kelvin. The number is often compared, cautiously, to the surface temperature of the sun, not because they are the same thing, but because human intuition has no better scale for how wrong this feels. There is no fire here, no oxygen consumption, no heat lingering in the water. The energy is real, measurable, and vanishes almost as soon as it appears. Physics allows it because the duration is too short for the surrounding world to respond. Biology allows it because the shrimp's body is not where the extremes occur. This is the first uncomfortable lesson. Survival is achieved not by resisting the limit, but by stepping aside while the limit is crossed nearby. The shrimp's claw is reinforced with layered mineral structures that absorb shock, not heat, because heat never reaches it in time. Nerves do not register pain because the event ends before signals could travel. Water, usually a shield against temperature, becomes a transient accomplice, collapsing inward with indifference. The shrimp does this repeatedly, sometimes dozens of times a day, spending enormous metabolic energy to generate a phenomenon that exists for less than a blink. It is inefficient, wasteful, and dangerously close to self-destruction, and yet it persists because the equations balance just enough. The horror is not that the shrimp creates something violent, but that the natural world permits such an arrangement at all. No safety margin is built in. If the claw were a fraction slower, the bubble would not form. If it were a fraction faster, structural failure would follow. There is no warning zone, no graceful degradation. The system works only at the edge where it should not, producing a flash of plasma in seawater, and then returning to silence, as if nothing unusual happened. In that silence is the unsettling truth. Extreme conditions do not need catastrophe to justify themselves. They only need to be brief. What collapses first is not flesh, but expectation. Sound, under normal conditions, is harmless information, a pressure ripple meant to be ignored, filtered, translated into something useful. In water, however, pressure behaves differently. It moves faster, couples more efficiently with tissue, and refuses to stay abstract. The pistol shrimp's snap produces a noise that is technically audible, but the sound is not the weapon. The damage occurs before hearing is even possible. When the cavitation bubble implodes, it generates a shock wave, a rapid, localized spike in pressure that propagates outward faster than most biological systems can adapt. Cells are elastic only within limits. Membranes tolerate deformation until they don't. At a certain threshold, structure becomes irrelevant and geometry takes over. The shock wave compresses water so abruptly that nearby organisms experience something closer to instantaneous squeezing than impact. There is no penetration, no tearing motion, just a rapid reduction in available volume. For small prey, this is enough. Nervous systems fail not from trauma, but from interruption. Electrical gradients collapse, ion channels lose coherence, and biological order unravels quietly. This is the second contradiction. No physical contact is required, yet the outcome is definitive. The shrimp never touches its target. It does not chase, grapple, or overpower. It simply triggers a transient region where pressure exceeds what life nearby was built to tolerate. Physics does the rest without preference. What makes this unsettling is not efficiency, but indifference. The same mechanism that stuns prey can fracture aquarium glass under controlled conditions, an outcome that feels inappropriate for an animal small enough to fit in a human hand. Yet the shrimp pays a cost. Each snap transmits force back through its own limb, and the claw gradually degrades, repaired continuously through slow biological maintenance. There is no invulnerability here, only constant compensation. The system functions because breakdown is paced just slowly enough to be outperformed by repair. Pressure in this context is not loud, dramatic, or cinematic. It is brief, localized, and final. The water does not churn, bubbles do not rise in chaos. Most of the violence is over before the eye can track it. What remains is a body that has crossed a survival threshold without ever being struck. This is not predation as dominance, but predation as exploiting the narrow tolerance ranges of living matter. Sound is merely the trace left behind, a byproduct humans notice because hearing is how they interface with the world. To everything else involved, the event is mechanical, silent, and deeply unfair. Nature does not require direct force to cause collapse. It only needs conditions to change faster than biology can respond. Power, in living systems, is usually constrained by caution. Muscles are built to trade peak output for longevity, tendons to stretch before they snap, joints to fail gradually rather than instantly. The pistol shrimp violates this convention by compressing its entire power budget into a single catastrophic movement. The closing claw is driven by a latch and spring mechanism, not by muscle contraction alone. Muscle loads energy slowly into an elastic structure, and then a mechanical catch releases it all at once. The result is an angular acceleration so high that if scaled to a human arm, it would tear connective tissue apart before motion even became visible. This is not strength in the traditional sense, it is overclocking. The shrimp's muscle fibers are not exceptional for their size, but the timing of release pushes the output far beyond what continuous biological control would allow. In most animals, such a strategy would be suicidal. High acceleration produces internal shear forces, and shear is where tissues fail first. But the shrimp's claw is asymmetrical, reinforced with mineralized layers arranged to redirect stress away from critical joints. Even so, damage accumulates, microfractures form, material fatigue sets in. The claw is a consumable component, rebuilt again and again over the animal's lifespan. This reveals the third uncomfortable rule. The system is not designed to avoid damage, only to survive it just long enough. There is no safety margin in the strike itself. The margin exists only in the organism's ability to repair afterward. Each snap risks structural compromise, but not snapping risks starvation. Evolution selects the option that breaks slowly, rather than the one that fails immediately. Energy expenditure reflects this gamble. A single strike costs a disproportionate amount of metabolic effort relative to the shrimp's size. ATP is burned rapidly, calcium floods muscle cells, and recovery is not instantaneous. The animal cannot fire continuously without collapse. It lives in cycles of extreme output, followed by enforced rest, a rhythm dictated by biochemical limits rather than choice. This is a body operating near its maximum tolerable stress, not occasionally, but as a default state. The unsettling part is not the power itself, but how precisely it is managed. If release timing drifted, if the latch slipped early, if the spring stiffened with age, the forces would redirect inward. There is no redundancy to catch such errors. Failure would be sudden and terminal. That it does not happen more often is not comforting. It means the shrimp exists in a narrow corridor of viability, where performance and self-destruction are separated by milliseconds and micrometers. Biology here does not prioritize comfort, stability, or resilience. It prioritizes outcome. The claw closes, the energy discharges, the system survives another cycle. Not because it is safe, but because so far it has not crossed the line where safety becomes relevant. Two extremes rarely coexist without compromise. High-impact mechanics demand rigid structures, simplified control, and tolerance for collateral damage. Complex sensory systems demand delicacy, stability, and uninterrupted signal processing. In most animals, one excludes the other. The mantis shrimp ignores that expectation. Its strike accelerates with forces comparable, at its scale, to ballistic events, yet its eyes remain among the most intricate visual organs known in biology. This is the contradiction. During a strike, the mantis shrimp's raptorial appendage unfurls in less than a few milliseconds, generating cavitation bubbles similar in principle to those of the pistol shrimp, along with shock waves that travel back through the body. Such impulses should overwhelm fine neural structures. Vibrations alone should blur vision, scramble photoreceptor timing, or induce cumulative neurological damage, but they don't, at least not enough to stop the animal from functioning. The mantis shrimp sees color, polarization, and depth through a compound eye divided into specialized bands, each processing a narrow slice of visual information. This system is metabolically expensive and neurologically dense. It should be incompatible with routine exposure to extreme mechanical stress. The resolution lies in an unsettling trade-off. The mantis shrimp's visual system is fast, not precise. Rather than integrating information into a detailed image, it categorizes rapidly, offloading interpretation to behavior rather than analysis. The eyes scan constantly, making micro-movements that compensate for instability. During a strike, neural processing does not pause, it simplifies. There is no attempt to maintain clarity under stress, only to retain enough signal to act again if needed. Meanwhile, the striking limb absorbs punishment through a layered structure of mineralized chitin arranged in a helicoidal pattern, dispersing cracks and preventing catastrophic failure. Damage still occurs. The appendage degrades over time, repaired during molting cycles. Vision, too, is not immortal. Photoreceptors burn out. Neural pathways fatigue. The system endures because loss is staggered, never synchronized. What makes this disturbing is the absence of harmony. These systems are not optimized to coexist. They tolerate each other. The mantis shrimp lives as a bundle of near incompatibilities, held together by constant motion and continuous repair. There is no resting state where the body is fully safe. Seeing and striking are both survival requirements, and neither yields ground. The animal persists by refusing to choose, accepting inefficiency and damage as the cost of maintaining two extremes at once. This is not elegance. It is brute coexistence. The lesson is quiet and cold. Biology does not always resolve conflicts. Sometimes it simply runs them in parallel and allows wear to accumulate, trusting that reproduction will occur before the bill comes due. Energy in biological systems is supposed to flow smoothly, buffered by storage, moderated by feedback loops that prevent sudden depletion. Spikes are dangerous. They create heat, oxidative stress, and biochemical chaos that cells are not built to endure repeatedly. Both pistol shrimp and mantis shrimp ignore this caution by design. Each extreme strike compresses a large fraction of daily energy expenditure into a moment so brief that conventional metabolic accounting almost breaks down. Muscle fibers flood with calcium, ATP is consumed faster than it can be regenerated, and metabolic byproducts accumulate locally before circulation has time to redistribute them. In most animals, this pattern signals imminent failure. Cells forced into such demand enter stress pathways, mitochondria leak reactive oxygen species, and recovery becomes incomplete. Yet these crustaceans continue, not because the cost is low, but because it is precisely scheduled. The strikes are rare, separated by enforced pauses where metabolism drops, repair enzymes activate, and damaged proteins are replaced. There is no surplus capacity here. The margin between functional recovery and cascading failure is thin. If food intake drops, if temperature shifts alter reaction rates, if oxygen availability declines even slightly, the balance tips. This is a life calibrated to abundance and precision. The unsettling implication is that the shrimp's power is not a sign of robustness, but of fragility masked by timing. The system works only because nothing interrupts it. Energy debt is tolerated briefly, never forgiven. Over time, the cost accumulates anyway. Lifespans are limited, molting cycles slow, repair efficiency declines. There is no long-term equilibrium, only a series of short-term solvencies. From the outside, the strike looks effortless, almost casual. Internally, it is closer to a controlled metabolic emergency. The animal survives by flirting with collapse, again and again, trusting that each recovery will complete before the next demand arrives. This is not optimization for endurance. It is optimization for decisive action in a narrow ecological window. The horror lies in how little slack exists. These organisms are not thriving in spite of their extremes. They are surviving because of them, burning through biochemical capital at a rate that would be unsustainable anywhere else. Nature permits this because the accounting does not extend far into the future. As long as the numbers balance today, tomorrow is irrelevant. At some point, the question stops being how these systems work and becomes why they are allowed to exist at all. There is no hidden safeguard waiting to intervene, no biological referee monitoring stress, temperature, pressure, or energy debt. The pistol shrimp and mantis shrimp persist because the equations governing them never forbid the outcome. Physics permits cavitation. Material science allows layered composites to delay fracture. Biochemistry tolerates brief excursions into instability. That is all the permission required. What feels wrong is not that these animals are powerful, but that nothing in nature insists on moderation. The same rules that make gentle swimming possible also allow plasma to form in seawater, provided it vanishes quickly enough. The same metabolic pathways that sustain slow movement can be driven into near collapse, provided recovery barely keeps pace. There is no concept of cruelty or excess here, only thresholds. Cross them for too long and the system fails. Approach them briefly and the system is considered functional. This is the final discomfort. Survival is not granted to what is safe, stable, or conservative. It is granted to what fits inside the margins of physical law, even if those margins are razor thin. The shrimp do not cheat the rules. They exploit the gaps between response times, between cause and consequence. Heat dissipates too slowly to matter. Pressure propagates faster than nerves can react. Damage accumulates slower than reproduction occurs. The balance is temporal, not moral. Seen this way, these animals are not exceptions. They are reminders. The natural world is full of systems operating without buffers, without guarantees, without concern for longevity beyond the next successful cycle. What makes this unsettling is the realization that nothing prevents such designs from existing elsewhere, at other scales, under other conditions. Safety is not a universal principle. It is an emergent luxury. The pistol shrimp snaps again. The mantis shrimp strikes again. Each time, the system runs closer to its limits than intuition finds comfortable. And each time it works, not because it should, but because nothing in the equation says it cannot.